Okay, what we're learning about now is patterns. Now, patterns are anything that follows a repeated rule over and over and over again. The patterns examples that I have on here are relatively easy to follow. So if you just look at the first one, we have A, B, A, B, A, B. Now that rule is it goes from A to B and back to A to B and A to B. So we can assume by following that rule that the next one's going to be A and the next one's going to be B. The next one is not that much more difficult, but here we have A, B, B, A, B, B. Now, if we are to assume that the same repeating rule is going to happen, then the next one would be A, B, B. And then here is one similar to that, but it's AAB, AAB, and then we have A, so that means the next one would be AB. Okay? Now, again, when patterns get a little bit more complicated, the only thing that you have to consider is make sure that you're following the same rule, that everything fits the same pattern. If we look at this pattern started right now, we can come up with lots and lots of different rules for this pattern because there's only two terms. These are what we call terms. So I would put T1 and T2 down here. Okay? Since there's only two terms, 1 and 2, I can make up probably hundreds of different rules of what this pattern can follow. In order to figure out what an actual pattern is, you have to see at least three terms, because I could say, oh look, we're adding one each time, so that means term 3 would be 3 circles, or I could say that we're doubling, so that means term 3 would be 1, we double to 2, 2 we would double to 4, and the next term we would double to 8. I could say that maybe we're going up and down. I could say we went from 1 to 2 to 1 to 2 to 1 to 2. We can make up lots of different rules for this pattern because we don't have a third term. If we have a third term, that's when you should be able to narrow it down to a pretty small field of what the rules are. So if I did this, okay, now with our term 3, we can say, oh, we went from 1 to 2 to 4. Well, the rule that I should be able to notice is, excuse me, I can narrow it down to at least 2 right away. I can say, oh look, this is doubling. We went from 1 to 2 and 2 to 4, so the next one should be 8 if I follow that rule. Or I could say that we are adding. So this one we added 1, this one we added 2, so the next one we would add 3. So it could be 7. Right? But, so when I say, okay, from whatever rule that you see, tell me what the next term would be. So if I say, okay, if I follow this rule of the adding one more, term 4 would be, well, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 in it, so that means I have to add 3, so this one has to have 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that means the next one would add 4, so I would go from 7 to 11. Now again, that follows the rule. If I followed the original rule of doubling, so this one says term 1 we doubled to 2, term 3 we doubled 2 to 4, so that means my next term would have to multiply by 2, and 4 times 2 is 5, 6, 7, 8 is 8. Both answers are correct because I can validate my answer. I can give you an actual reason of how my answer is that way. Okay? Now, these are picture patterns that I'm using, but I'm explaining them with numbers, which is very valuable because pretty much any pattern that you come up with can be explained by numbers. So you can also have number patterns like this. So here we have 4, 7, 10. What is happening to make these? So now I have my 3 terms, term 1, term 2, term 3. So now I should be able to come up with a rule to come up with term 4. Well, I can see that, well, to get to 4 to 7, I had to add 3, To get from 7 to 10, I had to add 3, so that means my next rule is going to be add 3 again, so my next term would be 13, and so on and so forth. Okay? As long as you can explain that pattern, it's fine. Here's another number pattern. Okay, this one I have 3 terms again, so you should be able to figure out what the rule is, what the pattern is. We go from 3 to 9 to 27. So again, take a second, see if you can figure out what that pattern is. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video there. If you haven't paused it and figured it out yet, I'd ask you to do that right here. Pause it and try to figure out what the pattern is, because here is the answer. Okay, if I say, okay, how do I get from 3 to 9? Well, I can add 6. So does that mean I'm going to add 6 again? Well, 9 plus 6 is 15, so that means 27 would be wrong. So, what is it? How do I get from 3 to 9? Well, I can 3 times 3 is 9. What is 9 times 3 is 27. Okay, so that is my pattern. So now, for my next term, I would have to say, what is 27 times 3? Go ahead and see if you can figure that out. So pause the video, see if you can figure out what the next term in the pattern would be. Okay, if you haven't done it yet, the answer is 27 times 3. So 3 times 7 is 21. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. So the next term would be 81. Okay, so again, when you do your practice sheets coming up here, you're going to have to be able to show me picture patterns as well as number patterns. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. See if you can figure out by the terms that are shown. So again, you need at least 3 terms to be able to figure out what a pattern is, and then see if you can figure out what those next terms are. All right, that's what you're going to be having to do with patterns.